You know, when the Galactic Peacekeeping Council installed those emergency quantum communicators on all their diplomatic vessels, they probably figured they'd get the usual reports. Pirates attacking trade routes, maybe some territorial disputes over mining rights, possibly a diplomatic incident involving someone accidentally insulting another species' mating rituals. What they didn't expect was a frantic transmission from Commander Zoltrak, their most decorated first contact specialist, that screaming about humanity being terrifyingly advanced beyond all galactic comprehension. The transmission came in at 0347 Galactic Standard Time, which is really inconvenient when you're trying to sleep off a 3-day conference on proper xenobiological waste disposal protocols. High Counselor Vextar nearly choked on his ceremonial sleeping gel when the emergency klaxon started wailing. Council emergency. Council emergency. Commander Zoltrak reporting from Earth System, Sector 7 Alpha 9. We have encountered the human species and, by the 7 moons of Zathor, they're absolutely terrifying. Now, Zoltrak wasn't exactly what you'd call excitable. This was a being who once negotiated a peace treaty between the crystalline hive mind and the gaseous collective while both sides were actively trying to digest him. So when he's hyperventilating through his gill slits about humans being scary, the entire council pays attention. What's your status, Commander? Vextar demanded, suddenly very awake. We approached their planet following standard first contact protocols. Minimal show of force, diplomatic intentions clearly broadcast, offering of standard trade agreements. But sir, they completely ignored our weapons. One of them, a human called Jake Thompson, looked at our plasma cannons and actually laughed. Then he invited us to something called a barbecue and said our ship looked hungry. The council exchanged nervous glances. Species that could casually dismiss peacekeeping plasma technology were usually the kind that had conquered entire star systems before breakfast. Are you under attack, Commander? Well, no, sir, but that's what makes it so terrifying. This Jake human has us completely surrounded by what he calls his pit setup, and he keeps forcing us to consume these meat-based chemical compounds he calls brisket. Every time we try to leave, he offers us more food and asks if we want to see his dry rub technique. We don't know what a dry rub is, sir, but it sounds ominous. Vextar could hear other crew members in the background. Lieutenant Quarks, their weapons specialist, was apparently arguing with someone about the proper consistency of barbecue sauce. Chief Diplomat Rendell seemed to be taking notes on something called coleslaw preparation methods. Commander, what exactly is your tactical situation? Sir, the human has demonstrated casual mastery over fire-based cooking technology that could easily be weaponized. He controls flame with the confidence of someone who's conquered physics itself. And sir, the food he's forcing us to eat, it's actually quite good. Really good. I think he's trying to make us dependent on his superior cuisine technology. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within the hour. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, all buzzing with nervous energy about this new human threat. The Zephyrian delegate kept molting anxiously, leaving little feather piles all over his seat. The mechanoid representatives' cooling systems were working overtime. We've lost contact with our most elite diplomatic team, Vextar announced grimly. They appear to have been captured by a single human using advanced food-based psychological warfare. We must assume the worst. Let's rewind to 6 hours earlier, when everything started going sideways faster than a Glorxian merchant running from tax collectors. The Galactic Peacekeeping vessel Harmony's Edge had been cruising toward Earth with all the confidence of a species that had successfully made first contact with over 300 different civilizations. Their scans had been pretty encouraging, honestly. Standard carbon-based bipedal species, recently discovered fire, just invented basic metallurgy, probably still impressed by shiny objects and loud noises. Commander Zoltrak had reviewed the mission briefing twice. Standard procedure: approach the planet, display superior technology to establish dominance hierarchy, offer basic trade agreements in exchange for mineral rights, and maybe recruit a few promising specimens for the Galactic Academy. Easy day's work. The ship's sensors detected a small settlement, in what the humans apparently called Georgia, and Zoltrak figured it was as good a place as any to land. The scans showed one human in the area, working with some kind of primitive cooking apparatus, perfect for a low-key first contact. What Zoltrak hadn't counted on was Jake Thompson. Jake was having a pretty good morning, all things considered. The brisket had been smoking since 4 a.m., his dry rub was performing beautifully, and he had 12 hours before the church fundraiser barbecue started. Then this weird-looking aircraft settled down in his backyard, and Jake figured his buddies from the VFW were pulling some kind of elaborate prank. The ship's landing ramp descended with all the dramatic flair the Peacekeeping Corps could muster. Zoltrak strode down the ramp in his full-dress uniform, flanked by 2 heavily armed Marines, weapons prominently displayed. The standard intimidation protocol had worked on literally every other species they'd encountered. "Greetings, primitive human," Zoltrak announced in his most authoritative voice, his universal translator working overtime. "I am Commander Zoltrak of the Galactic Peacekeeping Council. We represent the dominant civilizations of this galaxy, and we have come to offer your species a place in our vast interstellar community, provided you accept our terms of—" "Well, be damned," Jake interrupted, not even looking up from adjusting his smoker's air vents. "Why all really went all out with the costumes this time? That makeup work is incredible, Zoltrak. Did Tommy put you up to this? Tell him the alien suit looks real good, but next time maybe don't land that contraption so close to my tomatoes." Zoltrak blinked all 4 of his eyes in confusion. The human hadn't shown any of the expected fear responses. No cowering, no displays of submission, no desperate attempts to appease superior beings. Just casual dismissal and something about tomatoes. "Human, you fail to comprehend the situation. We possess weapons capable of reducing your entire settlement to component atoms. Your cooperation is not requested, it is demanded." Jake finally looked up, wiping his hands on his apron. He glanced at the plasma rifles like someone might look at a peculiar garden tool. "Those are some fancy squirt guns you got there. But you know what? I bet why all are hungry after traveling all this way. When's the last time you had some real barbecue? And I mean real barbecue. Not that gas grill nonsense." The alien Marines exchanged confused glances. Lieutenant Quarks raised his weapon threateningly, but Jake just chuckled and walked over to his smoker. "See, the secret is in the rub and the patience," Jake continued, completely ignoring the advanced alien weaponry pointed at him. "Most folks want to rush it, but good brisket takes time. Started this bad boy at 4 this morning, and she won't be ready until tonight. But I got some ribs that are just about perfect." Zoltrak was beginning to panic. Every other species had either attacked them by now or surrendered completely. This casual confidence could only mean one thing. The humans possessed technology so advanced that they considered peacekeeping weapons to be toys. "Your bravado will not save you, human. We have conquered civilizations across the galaxy." "That's nice," Jake said, opening his smoker and releasing a cloud of aromatic smoke that made even the aliens' enhanced olfactory systems sit up and pay attention. "But I bet none of them could make ribs like these. Here, try one." And that's when Jake Thompson, former Army cook and current barbecue pit master, accidentally conquered the Galactic Peacekeeping Council's most elite diplomatic team with a plate of hickory-smoked pork ribs. Admiral Krex Tai was not having a good day. He'd been dragged out of his war chamber, where he'd been planning the subjugation of the rebel mining colonies, forced to listen to some ridiculous story about humans with superior cuisine weapons, and now he was leading a full assault fleet to what should have been a simple first contact mission. "This is embarrassing," he growled to his second-in-command, Captain Thurrock. "One human defeats our best diplomatic team with food-based warfare, and now I have to bring 30 warships to rescue them. The other admirals will never let me live this down." Krex Tai had earned his reputation the hard way, through 40 years of crushing rebellions and imposing galactic law on stubborn species. He'd never met a problem that couldn't be solved with overwhelming firepower and aggressive negotiation tactics. This Jake Thompson character was about to learn what happened when you messed with the Galactic Peacekeeping Corps. The assault fleet dropped out of hyperspace with enough energy discharge to light up every sensor array in the solar system. 30 dreadnoughts bristling with enough weaponry to crack a moon, all focused on one small backyard in Georgia. Sensors confirm the location, Admiral. The diplomatic vessel is still there, apparently intact. Any signs of our missing crew? Sir, we're detecting multiple life signs in the area, but they appear to be sitting down. And there's some kind of atmospheric disturbance that our computers are having trouble analyzing. Krex T squinted at the sensor readouts. What kind of atmospheric disturbance? It's aromatic, sir. The computer keeps trying to classify it as some kind of chemical weapon, but the readings don't match any known toxins. Down in Jake's backyard, the diplomatic team was deep into their third helping of ribs when the sky suddenly filled with warships. Commander Zoltrak looked up from his coleslaw and sighed. Oh, that's probably Admiral Krex T. He's going to be absolutely insufferable about this. Jake squinted up at the fleet of ships hovering overhead. More friends of yours? Well, I hope they're hungry. I got plenty more where this came from, but we might need to fire up the second smoker. Jake, I don't think you understand, Lieutenant Quark said between bites of brisket. Admiral Krex T is the Peacekeeping Corps' most aggressive commander. He's conquered 17 star systems and never lost a battle. Sounds like a man who needs a good meal and a chance to relax, Jake replied, already heading toward his supply shed. I got enough meat to feed an army up there. Though I gotta say, the presentation's a bit much. Why always travel in such big groups? The comm system crackled to life as Admiral Krex T's voice boomed down from the flagship. Attention, hostile human. You are surrounded by the full might of the Galactic Peacekeeping Corps. Release our diplomatic team immediately, or face the consequences. Jake picked up the comm unit that Zoltrak had been using and pressed what looked like the talk button. Well, hello there, Admiral. Name's Jake Thompson. Your friends down here have been telling me all about you. Why don't you come on down and join us? I just put some chicken on the grill, and I got corn on the cob that'll make you forget all about conquering things. Up on the flagship, Admiral Krex T stared at the comm system like it had just insulted his mother. Did he just invite me to dinner? I believe so, sir, Captain Thurrock replied, checking his translation matrix. He also mentioned something about corn that will make you forget about conquering. It might be some kind of mind control vegetable. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from Commander Zoltrak. Zoltrak's voice came through crystal clear, though he sounded oddly relaxed. Admiral, you really need to try Jake's dry rub technique. I've learned more about proper seasoning in the last 4 hours than in my entire military career. Also, did you know humans have 37 different regional variations of barbecue sauce? Krex T was beginning to understand why this situation had required an entire assault fleet. Admiral Krex T had made a career out of reading tactical situations, and this one was making his head hurt. His most experienced diplomatic team was apparently being held captive by barbecue. One human was casually inviting 30 warships down for dinner, and his sensors were detecting what could only be described as delicious atmospheric particles. Against his better judgment, Krex T decided to investigate personally. If this Jake Thompson character had somehow weaponized food to this degree, the Peacekeeping Corps needed to understand the threat. The Admiral's personal shuttle landed in Jake's backyard with significantly less fanfare than the original diplomatic vessel. Krex T emerged in full battle armor, flanked by his personal guard, expecting to find his diplomatic team under some kind of advanced mind control. Instead, he found Commander Zoltrak explaining the finer points of coleslaw texture to Chief Diplomat Rendell, while Lieutenant Quarks was taking detailed notes on something called the 3-2-1 method for ribs. Commander, report, Krex T barked. Oh, Admiral. Perfect timing, Zoltrak replied cheerfully. Jake was just about to show us how humans prepare for their seasonal warfare celebrations. Apparently they call it 4th of July, and the demonstrations are quite impressive. Jake wiped his hands on his apron and grinned. Admiral Krex T, I presume? Your boys here have been telling me you're interested in seeing what us humans can do. Well, you picked a good week. The whole town's getting ready for our big Independence Day celebration. We demand to see your military capabilities, Krexta stated firmly, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. Military capabilities? Well, I suppose you could call it that, Jake chuckled. Come on, let me show you around town. Fair warning, though, it might get a little loud. Jake led the growing parade of aliens down Main Street, where the volunteer fire department was setting up for their annual demonstration. Chief Martinez saw Jake approaching with what appeared to be a collection of elaborate costumes and assumed it was part of the Independence Day festivities. Jake, perfect timing. We're about to run the ladder truck through its paces. You bringing judges for the competition? Something like that, Chief. These folks want to see what we're capable of. Admiral Krexta watched in fascination as human emergency response teams executed what could only be described as flawless tactical maneuvers. The fire truck extended its ladder with military precision, crews deployed hoses with practiced efficiency, and the entire operation demonstrated a level of coordination that would make his own Marines jealous. Impressive tactical vehicle deployment, Captain Zoltrak noted. The humans appear to have integrated emergency response with military readiness. And look at that precision, added Commander Zoltrak. They make it look effortless. Jake just nodded proudly. Chief Martinez has been running the department for 20 years. His crews can handle anything. Their next stop was the high school football field where the marching band was rehearsing for the Independence Day parade. Admiral Krexta had seen military formations across the galaxy, but he'd never seen anything quite like 150 teenagers moving in perfect synchronization while simultaneously producing coordinated acoustic patterns. By the 7 moons, whispered Lieutenant Quarks. They've achieved perfect harmony between movement and sound production. Even our most elite ceremonial guards can't match that level of coordination. And they're all so young, observed Chief Diplomat Rendell. Human military training must begin at an incredibly early age. Jake beamed with pride. That's our marching band. And state champions 3 years running. Director Wilson really knows how to whip them into shape. The final demonstration was at the town park, where the pyrotechnics crew was setting up for the fireworks display. To Jake, it was just Bobby Henderson and his crew making sure all the fuses were properly connected. Into a group of aliens who'd never seen humans casually handle explosive devices, it looked like a demonstration of terrifyingly casual mastery over destructive forces. They're handling those explosive charges like they're toys, Admiral Krexta muttered. Sir, Captain Zoltrak added nervously. Our sensors indicate those devices could level several city blocks if detonated simultaneously. Yeah, Bobby really goes all out for the 4th, Jake agreed. Wait till you see the grand finale. Last year he spelled out USA in the sky with red, white, and blue explosions. Took him 6 months to plan the timing. Admiral Krexta was beginning to understand why the Galactic Council was so worried about humanity. By the time they made it back to Jake's backyard, Admiral Krexta was experiencing what humans might call an existential crisis. Everything he'd seen suggested that humanity was so advanced, so confident in their abilities, that they treated military-grade coordination and explosive handling as community entertainment. Jake, he said carefully, settling down at the picnic table that had somehow become an impromptu diplomatic meeting space, we may have misjudged your species. How's that? Jake asked, checking the temperature on his brisket. We initially scanned your planet and detected what appeared to be a primitive civilization. We came here expecting to find beings who had barely discovered metallurgy. Jake laughed. Well, I can see how you might get that impression. We're not exactly advertising our capabilities to whoever might be listening out there in space. But shoot, Admiral, we've been working with metal for thousands of years. I got a smoker made from a 1/2-inch steel plate that'll outlast most spacecraft. This was exactly the kind of humble bragging that had been driving the diplomatic team crazy for hours. Every time Jake tried to downplay human achievements, he somehow made them sound even more impressive. When you say thousands of years, Commander Zoltrak interjected, you mean thousands of your local years, correct? Well, yeah, we've had the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the Industrial Revolution. These days we got metallurgy down to a science. We can make alloys that'll withstand just about anything. Admiral Krex TA exchanged glances with his officers. Most species took hundreds of thousands of years to progress from basic tool use to advanced metallurgy. Humans had apparently done it in what amounted to a cosmic eye blink. And your military capabilities? Admiral Krex TA pressed. What we witnessed today was remarkable, but surely that wasn't your full strength. Jake scratched his head thoughtfully. Military? Well, I did serve in the army for a while. I had 2 tours overseas. But that was mostly cooking for the troops. We got folks who are a lot better at the fighting part than I am. You served in multiple military campaigns? Lieutenant Quarks asked, suddenly very interested. Afghanistan and Iraq. But like I said, I was just a cook. Made sure the soldiers got fed proper. Good food's important when you're far from home. The aliens absorbed this information with growing alarm. Jake had casually mentioned participating in multiple interplanetary conflicts while dismissing his role as just a cook. The implications were staggering. These conflicts, Chief Diplomat Rendell asked carefully, were they against other human factions, or? Oh no, same planet. Humans have been fighting each other for pretty much our entire history. We're working on getting better at the talking it out part. But it's been a slow process. Admiral Krex TA nearly choked on his iced tea. A species that had spent its entire evolutionary history in constant warfare, developing military technology through continuous conflict, and they were treating advanced tactical demonstrations as community entertainment. Jake, he said slowly, what would you consider to be humanity's greatest weakness? Jake thought about it while flipping some burgers that had appeared on the grill at some point during the conversation. Probably our tendency to overthink things, he finally answered. We got this habit of making simple stuff complicated. Take barbecue, for instance. You got your basic principles, good meat, proper seasoning, low heat, lots of time. But then people go and add all kinds of unnecessary complications. 17 different regional sauce variations, arguments about wood types, debates over dry rub versus wet marinades. Sometimes simple is better. Every example Jake gave of human weakness somehow reinforced the aliens' growing conviction that humanity was impossibly advanced. A species that had conquered the complexities of interplanetary cuisine to such a degree that they considered their mastery to be overthinking? It was terrifying. Sir, Captain Thurrock whispered to Admiral Krex TA, I think we may need to contact the High Council immediately. Already on it, Admiral Krex TA replied grimly. This changes everything. 3 weeks later, Jake Thompson found himself in the middle of the most surreal situation of his life, and considering he'd spent the morning explaining barbecue sauce regional variations to a delegation of sentient crystals, that was saying something. His backyard had somehow become the unofficial galactic embassy for Earth. The Galactic Council, in their infinite wisdom, had decided that since Jake was obviously humanity's greatest military strategist and cultural expert, that he should be Earth's primary contact with galactic civilization. Jake had tried to explain that he was just a guy who ran a barbecue joint, but every attempt to clarify his actual qualifications somehow convinced the aliens that humans were even more advanced than they'd initially thought. You see, Iderelando, he'd explained to High Counselor Vextar during their first official meeting, I'm really not qualified for this whole ambassador thing. I never finished college. I spent most of my military service cooking. And my biggest diplomatic achievement before this was convincing the county health inspector that my smoker wasn't a fire hazard. Vextar had taken extensive notes and later reported to the Galactic Council that humanity's ambassador possessed such advanced educational systems that he considered his training incomplete, had mastered military logistics at the highest levels, and had successfully negotiated with local governmental regulatory agencies. The situation had spiraled completely out of control when other alien species started making pilgrimages to Earth specifically to try Jake's barbecue. Word had spread through galactic communication networks that humans had developed battle rations, so advanced that they could induce peaceful cooperation in even the most aggressive species. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium had offered to buy exclusive distribution rights to human barbecue sauce. The Mechanoid Collective wanted to analyze Jake's smoker design for potential military applications. 3 different species had declared Jake's coleslaw to be a cultural treasure worthy of galactic protection. "Jake," Commander Zoltrak said, settling down at what had become his regular spot at the picnic table. "The Council has reached a decision about Earth's status in the galactic community." "Please tell me you're not making us the capital of anything," Jake replied, checking the temperature on a brisket that was destined for the Glorxian ambassador's dinner. "Well, not exactly the capital, but the Council has voted to establish the Galactic Culinary Preservation Center here on Earth, with you as the primary cultural liaison." Jake sighed and handed Zoltrak a plate of ribs. "You know, 3 weeks ago my biggest problem was figuring out whether to expand my dining room or add a second smoker. And now? Now I got alien diplomats camping in my backyard. The president keeps calling to ask my opinion on space policy. And Bobby Henderson wants to know if the fireworks display needs to be bigger to impress visiting alien dignitaries." Admiral Krex TA, who had become something of a regular customer, looked up from his mac and cheese. "Jake, you have to understand the position you've put us in. For 300 years, the Galactic Council has maintained order through military strength and diplomatic intimidation. Then we encounter humanity. And suddenly we're all sitting around discussing the proper wood-to-meat ratio for optimal flavor development." "Is that a bad thing?" Jake asked. "That's the terrifying part," Admiral Krexta replied. "It's actually working better than anything we've tried before. Galactic conflicts are down 60% since we started serving your barbecue at council meetings. The rebel mining colonies surrendered last week just so they could get an invitation to your next cookout." Jake looked around his backyard, which now featured a permanent diplomatic dining area, a communications array that allowed real-time translation between 47 different species, and a smoker that had been upgraded with alien technology to maintain perfect temperature control. "You know what the really crazy part is?" he said finally. "What's that?" asked Chief Diplomat Rendell. "I'm actually starting to enjoy this. Turns out good food and good company work pretty much the same way whether you're dealing with humans or folks from halfway across the galaxy." Councilor Vex Tar, who was working his way through his second helping of pulled pork, nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps that's why your species is so formidable, Jake. You've mastered the most powerful force in the universe." "What's that?" "The ability to bring people together over a shared meal." Jake grinned and started loading up another plate. "Well, when you put it that way, I guess we humans are pretty scary after all." And so Jake Thompson, former Army cook and accidental galactic ambassador, continued serving up the most effective diplomatic tool the galaxy had ever encountered, but one barbecue plate at a time. The Galactic Council restructured their entire approach to interspecies relations around what became known as the Thompson Protocol, and Jake's barbecue joint became the most important diplomatic venue in known space. The only downside was that Jake had to start ordering his dry rub ingredients by the ton. But considering that galactic peace might depend on his brisket staying tender and his sauce staying tangy, he figured it was a small price to pay. Besides, business had never been better.